Welcome everybody to a webinar organised by the EHR4CR project. This webinar has been designed to give you an overview of the rationale for the project and its status and activities. My name is Richard Perkins. I'm responsible for communication on the project. This webinar will last about an hour. Everybody is on mute right now, but on your screen you should see a green bar that you can use to access questions and answers, so that you can ask questions during the course of the webinar. We will then come back to those questions at the end and try and give you some answers. Just to let you know that this session is being recorded, because our plan is that then it will be available for public viewing on the project website, EHR4CR.eu. There may be some polls during the course of the webinar just to check that the sound quality and so on is okay. Just please respond to those when they're presented. So as I said, our goal is really to help you understand the project, its objectives and achievements, hopefully give you information that you can take back to your organisation and colleagues, and during the questions to try and understand your needs and concerns. To do that, we have a structure for the agenda, and I'm joined by two colleagues from the project, Matt Sundgren, who's coordinator for the EHR4CR project, and Ian Ford, who's a healthcare partner from the University of Glasgow. And I'm going to pass over to Matt Sundgren then to take us through the challenges of clinical research and the introduction to the project. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Richard. Welcome everybody to this webinar, which is also the first webinar in a series of webinars that the project is going to produce over the next 6 months. So what I'm going to take you through is some of the challenges in clinical research, which have been the important background of EHR4CR as a project. So the healthcare needs has been changing over the last couple of years, and we are seeing a quite different patient landscape. There is a need for new, safer, more efficient medicines in new areas, and you see some of them in the right hand side of this slide, which is also putting quite a considerable pressure on healthcare budgets. These changes with an aging population and new demands and new medical needs actually has driven very much life science innovation. As you can see on this slide, there's quite an impressive number of activities in order to address those new medical needs in various areas, from rare diseases to Alzheimer and so forth. And this puts demand on the pharmaceutical industry and life science industry to expand treatment options and improve quality of life. This also demands quite significant new granularity of patient data and patient information, as you can see in the kind of concept of what we call personalized medicine. But this also, for the life science industry, comes in a difficult time, and you have probably seen these kind of graphics before. The industry has for some years, some decades, been a problem to produce more medical entities to the market. At the same time, the industry is pushing into more budget. As you also can see here, which is quite a striking fact, is that almost 60% of life science R&D budget is put in the clinical domain, in clinical development, which involve all the clinical trials activities. At the same time, we can see a parallel industry-centric growth in what is called information communication technology. On the right-hand side, you see there is a quite rich activity about healthcare being electronified, which is to say that many countries have electronic health records installed, and that level of quality of that data is actually expanding with a fast pace. At the same time, on the industry side, we have for decades been installing and making all our clinical trials activities electronified in the same way, using electronic data capture systems. And but it is actually a silo in which the industry doesn't have interoperability with healthcare data. And these kind of inefficiencies become quite obvious in this kind of clinical trial interface. It is in this clinical trial interface where EHR4CR as a project is actually trying to be solving problems. But this is also on a broader scale, and there is a need to bridge the gap between these kind of environments. On one side, the hospital side, the healthcare side, which is becoming much more electronified, and at the same time, the clinical trial and clinical science activities. We believe that this environment can be bridged, where we could have de-identified patient data that can be used for healthcare and research for clinical research purposes. And it's across countries, across systems. That is to say, it will never face a situation in Europe or elsewhere that we have one and the same electronic healthcare system and across sites. To speed up protocol design, patient recruitment, and data capture safety reporting is the essence of EHR4CR main objectives. In order to find solutions to reuse this kind of information for these clinical research purposes, it is absolutely imperative that there is a win for all stakeholders involved. And this slide is presenting a number of stakeholders that we believe have great benefits of reusing healthcare data for clinical research. It's not only life science industry and its academic institutions who conduct clinical science. It's also hospitals, it's health authorities, governments, and ultimately, of course, patients who could access new medicines in a more faster, effective way. So that is the background and the important clinical trial execution aspects that the project is aiming to address. And I'm going to present an overview and introduction to the EHR4CR project. EHR, which stands for Electronic Health Records for Clinical Research, is mandated by the Innovative Medicines Initiative, which is a joint research undertaking between the European Commission and the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industry Association, with a shared budget. And so EHR4CR is one of those projects who is mandated by IMI. It's also one of Europe's largest public-private partnerships projects in this area. It is a 4-year project. It started in 2011 and it's end in 2015. But the project has been granted an extension year for commercial deployment activities by 12 months. So the EHR4CR project consists of 35 partner companies, and it brings together key stakeholders in this area, key academic partners who is doing and conducting excellent research in medical informatics, together with 10 pharmaceutical companies and 11 hospital sites, where you can see on this slide. We also have an advisory board consisting of representatives of patient organizations, but also from EMA and FDA. It is important for EHR in its evaluation step before it was became a full project that we have enough hospital sites across Europe in order to demonstrate that the technical solutions for these clinical research purposes can be done across member states. And as we have sent out to you, we have an overview of EHR4CR as a video clip, which is also available on EHR's external website, and it's also available on the YouTube that we would like you to see. The project has two main deliverables. The project has developed a technical platform which consists of a set of tools and services. And as I have alluded to, the three services that has been very much demanded from life science industry, which have the greatest impact, is protocol feasibility as a first service, following by patient identification and recruitment services, and then the clinical trial data exchange services. All these three services will Richard take you through in much more greater detail. So that's one, which consists of a technical platform. It is important just to say here that these three services is just the beginning of a number of important services that we could foresee in the deployment phase with other service providers when this technical platform has been commercialized. The second deliverable is the business model, which is a framework which consists of different aspects, how to expand, how to make these kind of services scalable, and the different kind of interactions between the different roles that we have on the platform, which is to say the data provider, the hospitals, the service provider who run the services, and of course the data users, which could be academic partners or pharmaceutical industry. This business model outlines how these services can be a self-sustaining economic model and the kind of governance mechanism that we have put in place, which deals with accreditation and other aspects. The business model also outlined a roadmap for adoption, which we will talk about a little bit more in the end of this webinar. So with that, complete my introduction to the project. I'm very happy to hand over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Matt. So I'm going to take you through the technical platform through the three services that Matt has already identified. This first slide then just illustrates the fact the project has taken an iterative development approach. So we started with protocol feasibility. That is essentially complete in that all the development has been done, the piloting has been completed, and we're really in a phase right now where we make some small refinements to that. In parallel and staggered a bit, we started protocol recruitment services. The development of that platform is complete, and right now that is in the piloting phase. And the dotted line that goes down the chart there just shows roughly where we are today, and you'll see that we're right now developing the platform for the clinical trial data capture services, so that's not as far advanced. But we still have some months to go to the end of the project, which will end in March 2015. So I'm going to talk briefly about each of these services before handing over to Ian to take us through the pilot results. So first of all then, protocol feasibility. Well, the background to this, of course, is that we're really challenged today in getting together optimized protocols and running those protocols at sites that have the right patient populations. So it's estimated that a third of protocols have amendments to them that could have been avoided. And a lot of those amendments are starting even before the first patient has taken the first dose. So this rework really creates a lot of additional effort both for healthcare and for the pharmaceutical industry as we revise the protocols and take them through the whole review and approval process again. So there's clearly a need for better upfront protocol optimization and planning, so that we can understand the impact of the complexity of a clinical trial before we actually execute it. And we can identify those regions and sites with suitable patient populations. Now, we imagine, of course, that we could reuse electronic health records to improve protocol design, essentially being able to sort of test our protocol before it goes live. So we imagine being able to match patient populations to the protocol's inclusion-exclusion criteria across millions of records across Europe. This would allow us to then sort of change the clinical trial criteria to make sure that we maximize the success of the clinical trial. Ideally from one user interface that is standard for everybody, and that's the scenario that's been envisaged by EHR4CR. Of course, that needs some technology to make that happen, as well as some other aspects. But we have developed a platform that includes a central workbench that provides one interface to users that are responsible for developing clinical trial protocols, whether they be pharmaceutical protocols or academic protocols. And this interface allows the user to put in the protocol inclusion and exclusion criteria, and those can be time-framed and or statements exactly as they would be in the protocol itself. This query is then passed out to the different participating healthcare sites in EHR4CR. And that site controls whether that query can run and whether that query can access health record information. I just need to highlight as well that we're not accessing the electronic health record system directly, but a separate, segregated copy of that data that has been de-identified, so all the patient identifiers have been removed. And the reason for that is that for protocol feasibility, we only need to see aggregated numbers, and it's only those aggregated numbers that leave the site and get returned through the platform to the user. Even then, we have fuzzing logic that is applied if the counts are low, so that individual patients can't be identified. And that platform is operational now, and you can see a demonstration of that technology on our website by looking at the protocol feasibility platform video. Moving on to patient recruitment, a significant bottleneck for clinical research is identifying and recruiting patients to clinical trials. No matter what efforts we go to predict patient recruitment, still almost half of all clinical trials today are delayed because of patient recruitment problems. We believe that being able to electronically search databases of patients for patients that are suitable candidates for the trial could be a great aid to site staff and remove one of the principal causes of trial delays. Now, a number of sites already have such tools running locally, and the aim of the project is to provide these sorts of tools for a much wider range of healthcare sites that are involved in EHR4CR. The way this will work is that the platform will reuse that feasibility query. Now that query can be modified locally, and it runs locally now under slightly changed privileges, because it's just running on the local data and is completely contained within the hospital environment. So the query now will return potential patient candidates, and more importantly as well for investigators, it will return the names of treating physicians so that they can be contacted to broaden the recruitment reach for the protocol. The platform will also keep track of patients that are evaluated and recruited, so that whole numbers can be passed back to the sponsor company so that they can monitor trial progress across all of the sites that are engaged in the protocol. Now again, this platform has been developed, although it's going through testing right now. You can see a video demonstration of the platform in use on the project website. And finally, scenario 3, which was all about data capture. The challenge here is that we've had those two different silos for a long time now, with data being entered into healthcare, into the electronic health record, and a large proportion of that same data, when a patient's involved in a clinical trial, being entered into the research systems. Now, the estimates of how much data is duplicated varies from 40% to some sites reporting sort of 70 or 80%. But whatever the number is, the result of that inefficiency is really evident in sort of quite cumbersome and slow processes. That redundant data entry just introduces transcription errors and source issues. This part of the project is in a later stage, so it's very much work in progress, and it's a very complicated scenario as well, so the project will probably just prove the concept, and then it'll be an area that's worked on in more detail during later stages. That data exchange scenario takes place in two steps. So after protocol feasibility has been done, we identify the sites and initiate the sites, and then for those sites that will be involved in the clinical trial, we can do some work to set up the data capture environment. This essentially entails identifying within the electronic case report form those fields that will be pre-populated with data from the electronic health record or the clinical data warehouse. As we move into recruiting patients and those patients give informed consent, then we're in a position where we can look to actually transfer data from the electronic health record electronically into the electronic case report form on the research side of the equation. So there's two aspects to this. One is dealing with recruitment. Today, sites will maintain a manual log of enrollment which links the patient's research ID with the patient's electronic health record ID. And in the future scenario, we would have to replace that with some electronic log that will be maintained and managed at the site and only accessible at the site. In terms of data entry, now when the investigator or the study coordinator is entering data into the electronic case report form, when they arrive at a field that's been identified as needing data from the electronic health record, the system will pull data instances as well as the metadata from the electronic health record according to preset filters. So maybe the data from the last 24 hours or from the last week. But it's important to recognize that it's the investigator that will select the relevant data, and it's only when the investigator has made that selection that that data is actually pushed across to the electronic case report form together with audit trail information. At the same time, we have a unique opportunity in this scenario to address one of the issues around maintaining the investigator's copy of data in the electronic case report form. As we have a local store, then we can now hold a copy of that data also in the local store at the site. And the outcome of that really is that for the future, we can imagine a completely new paradigm for data entry, for hosting of data, and for archiving of clinical trial data. So as I say, the pilots have been going on, and I will now pass over to Ian Ford to take us through the results of those pilots and other aspects of the project. Ian.
Thank you, Richard. We're all familiar in our everyday lives with technology innovations that do not always work as expected when they're launched. You know, examples would be the launch of a new smartphone or a piece of software that have teething problems initially that have to be resolved. So we're very aware of this particular challenge, and we're doing a lot of work in conducting pilots of our technologies to evaluate the technology's reliability and usability. The first of these pilots involves a pilot of protocol feasibility. Now, this particular pilot is running in 11 major hospitals in 5 countries. It's running in Germany, in France, in the UK, in Switzerland, and in Poland. And each of these hospitals has established an EHR4CR compliant data warehouse so that they can interact with the EHR4CR platform. As part of the project, we reviewed a very large number of clinical trial protocols and looked for common data elements that were relevant to eligibility for those trials. And we compared those elements with elements that commonly exist within the data warehouses of typical hospitals. And in fact, we identified 75 key elements ranging from demographic data through diagnoses, concomitant medications, and laboratory data that were both commonly in protocols as inclusion or exclusion requirements, but also were commonly in the healthcare system databases. We've actually published a paper in the journal Trials describing those elements and justifying their use. The 11 hospitals also, within their data warehouses, ensured that those warehouses contained a large volume of data so that we could produce valid tests of the usability and speed of the system. In fact, the pilot we carried out contained data on over 5 million patients across Europe. The data was loaded into the local data warehouses and used as a test bed for the system. And a total of 12 clinical studies were evaluated to test the effectiveness of the system. We succeeded in overcoming a number of key hurdles. The first concern we had was about interoperability. We were working in different languages in different countries with different electronic health record systems. But we found that the platform actually worked effectively across all of those environments. A second major concern was the issue of data security, privacy and ethics, and we found that in the protocol feasibility pilot that no issues actually arose in those particular areas, and we were able to get permission to run the pilot in each of the countries and each of the hospitals involved. And we also think that the pilot has actually provided us with confidence that the data coming out of the system is meaningful and useful for the design of clinical trials. Now, there are a couple of minor tweaks being made in the system at the moment, largely just improving the actual usability of the system, but this pilot is effectively complete. The second pilot, which is still ongoing at the moment, is a pilot of the patient recruitment service. This pilot was based on evaluating recruitment in 13 real clinical studies. These studies covered multiple chronic and acute conditions, and the pilot was run across multiple EHR4CR sites, in this case in Germany, France and the United Kingdom. To fit the recruitment service pilot into the design of the platform, the patient recruitment criteria were simplified to map onto the 75 key data elements that had been selected in the initial feasibility service pilot. All of the data were available within the local data warehouses. Consent had to be obtained because these would be running live in many instances on live clinical studies. We needed consent both from ethical review boards but also from information governance services. One or two of those pieces of permission still ongoing, but most have now been obtained, and the platform installation is now, I think by now, is effectively complete across the multiple sites. So this pilot seems to be going well at the moment, and we expect the final results within the next month or so. I'd like to now move on and say a few words about the business model. Now, all successful technology rollouts require an effective business model. And in fact, many technology business models can be described in the context of what's called a two-sided network. And this is illustrated in this slide. The technology platform and the organizations providing services within that platform have a pivotal role, and that's shown in the center of the slide. But in each side of the network, we have two key sets of organizations and individuals. On the left-hand side, we have our data providers, and on the right-hand side, we have our data users. It might be a pharmaceutical company, but could be an academic or a government organization interested in conducting a study. A critical feature of a two-sided network is that the two sides have to be kept in balance. That is, we need effective business models to satisfy the needs of both the data providers and the data users. And we have a great deal of activity ongoing at the moment to ensure that our two-sided network is in balance. An important aspect of the balance is to ensure trust in what we're doing. And this slide illustrates some of the issues that we are facing. On the left-hand side, we are trying to ensure trust within the healthcare systems. We're achieving that by the segregation of data, as you've heard previously. We're not working directly on electronic patient records. We're working on a de-identified extraction from those records. We're also providing control to the hospitals and ensuring that we cover all ethical, privacy, regulatory and legal issues, and that none of those will be a future challenge to the success of the project. On the right-hand side of the slide, we are making sure that we ensure trust in relation to the patients whose data sits on the electronic health records. We're ensuring trust there by the process of de-identification of data so that individual patients cannot be identified, and by the process of consolidation so that only aggregated, unconsented patient information ever leaves the hospital. A third thing that we're doing, looking at the middle of the slide, is to provide future oversight as we move from an academic development project into a live working system. And a key way in which we will achieve that is through a new European institute that we are creating at the moment, called the European Institute for Innovation Through Health Data. The European Institute for Innovation Through Health Data will have a number of objectives. I'll focus on 3 of those at the moment. The first is to try to ensure best practices in information governance across Europe. The second is to ensure quality of all the systems involved, and to ensure that by carrying out assessments, certification of the systems, and audit of the processes to ensure that standards are maintained into the future. The third aspect of the Institute's work that I want to emphasize is to ensure synergy and consensus among the many stakeholders, to ensure that our two-sided network remains in balance as we move forward. So I will now hand you back to Matt Sundgren, who will complete the presentation.
Thank you, Ian. So our last section in this webinar is talking about the roadmap and the plans ahead forward, including the extension year. So what we see now, when we have completed the technical platform and is now in the final state of validating our pilots, there are some important aspects for the projects. As Ian said, we are essentially going from an R&D project into a commercial phase, and as the objective of the project is to go far more than to present that we can run these services. And the important thing is to create the sustainability and the scalability of EHR4CR services. And that is to see the system. So we need, during the extension year, to create a growing networks of data providers and hospitals. Important to say here is that we completed 3 different conferences in April this year in Brussels, where we addressing all 3 stakeholders. At the time in Brussels in April, we invited 100 hospitals and 80 attended. And out of that awareness, we now have a communication with the early adopter hospitals in Europe, which now consist of more than 10 hospitals in Finland, Sweden, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy. We would like to be connected to the platform in Q1 and Q2 next year. We also would like to enhance and deepen the engagement with the partner companies from pharma in EHR4CR, but also as to go beyond that. And that is to have the data users ready. Already 1 year ago, we have our first service provider confirmed, and that is Custodix, who is currently in the project, is running the development activities and coordinating development activities for the platform. So Custodix has been approved to be the first provider in Europe. Needless to say, in order for EHR4CR platform and network to grow, we need more service providers. So that will also be an important activity next year in order to engage and further enrich the activities between different service providers. So we are essentially, as Ian said, we have the Institute as a legal entity established already before the end of this year. We foresee that the Institute becomes operational in the first quarter, and we're also planning for our first large conference of the Institute in some way in Q2 2015, which essentially will be a very important moment and activity to attract, inform, engage different stakeholders into the project. We're also planning to do extensive pilots with new hospitals and early adopter pharmaceutical industry users in a similar way, but much more in reality of what you saw the presentation of the pilots that has been within the scope of the project next year. So in summary, EHR4CR project is an important initiative. I think for the first time, at least in Europe, we have been able to bring together multiple stakeholders. Needless to say, this kind of initiative cannot claim that this cannot be done within one stakeholder area. This needs to have multiple stakeholders on board. The other thing with the project is that it's overcoming the traditional and classical barriers that have up to now limit access of using EHRs for research. And it's also developing a platform that can run these services in a trustworthy way. An important thing to say here is that no data is ever leaving the hospital, as Ian said before. I think that so we only have patient counts that is getting to the platform, and in that way we are finding a very safe and trustworthy way to running these services. Together with the Institute, which is also a very important vehicle for trustworthy reuse of healthcare, data, we believe that EHR4CR product has all the necessary requirements to become scalable. With this kind of business model, we also think that EHR4CR is actually offering a completely new paradigm for clinical research in using these kind of EHR data, in the way that in the EHR4CR network with its platform, it's a foreseeable different service provider with a growing network of hospitals. We can really reach services can outreach many hospitals in a way that doesn't exist today. This could have a large impact in the 3 services that is part of EHR4CR scope. By optimizing clinical product design, it could not only reduce amendments, it could speed up and secure that we have good quality in our designs, and therefore setting the good platform to actually running the studies. As you already heard before, the patient recruitment identification is a major hurdle in the clinical trial process. With that, the EHR4CR could speed up that. And together with the 3rd service, this has really a large impact to clinical research in Europe. So with that, I thank you very much and hope to reach out with our 2nd webcast that is coming. And I would like Richard to actually say something about the webcast that we are producing at the moment. So over to you, Richard.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ian. Yes, so you've just been listening to an overview of EHR4CR, and as Matt said, this is just one of a number of topic-driven webinars that the project will be running over the next few months to make sure that we take you through the whole process of the EHR4CR project. And later webinars will go into more detail about the different services and about the business model and the deployment environment. So there will be further announcements coming out to you about those webinars, and those will go out to those participants on the webinar today. So just to let you know as well before we close that you can view this recording of this particular webinar on the project website at EHR4CR.eu. If you do have further questions and want to contact us, then you can either contact us by email to comms@EHR4CR.eu or through the Contact Us page on the website. And that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you for listening.